Hi, Benjamin. It's so nice to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I am very well, Elijah. How are you?
I'm doing fine as well. And like I mentioned earlier, thank you for coming, man. It means a whole lot. Okay, Benjamin, I am quite excited to have you on the show for some reasons, alright? Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking, because I believe in order to transition from a chaotic situation to that of a beautiful one, it takes the application of knowledge, quality information. And you see, when I discovered that light in the Hebrew definition means knowledge and darkness, ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking. And for that reason, our conversation is very important to me and even to the listeners. Okay, the second reason is for the sake of the folks who are going to be listening to our conversation. You know, I believe there are some things that Benjamin knows that some of my listeners, audience needs to hear you say these stuffs, directly from your mouth in order for them to experience transformation. I firmly believe that. And lastly, that is me. I am convinced that I'm definitely going to learn one or two things from your story, insight, and experiences. So right now, I want you to view us, and by us, I mean me and the listeners by the time they'll be listening to our conversation, as your student. So you are a teacher now, and we want to learn from you. Okay. So for that reason, let's get started with your introduction. Benjamin, talk to us about your journey. Let us know how you got here. And afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Benjamin, over to you.
Thank you, Elijah. My journey has been one of many mistakes and much self-inflicted suffering, but it has taught me a lot and as you said, led me to exactly where I am now. I began my adult life uh, by joining the United States Air Force at the age of 17. Became an explosive ordnance disposal technician. So I was bomb squad. I was diffusing uh, improvised explosive devices in Iraq and Afghanistan for the better part of 8 years. Um, when I transitioned out of the military, I struggled with a lot of things. I struggled with loss of purpose. I fell into addictive tendencies and self isolation. And it's really been a journey over the last 10 years, both professionally and personally, of uh, learning new skill sets, as you said, discovering new knowledge, applying it through the application of wisdom. And now I am trying to spearhead the first nonprofit approach to renewable energy development here in the United States.
Beautiful. One thing I learned from what you said so far is the fact that you didn't stay in the situation you were in. You mentioned you struggled with some things, and I believe, like what you said now, knowledge application, wisdom. Not many people would sought after wisdom, knowledge, like you mentioned, getting new knowledge. I've heard of stories where that folks had been in that addictive situation for a very long time. And now, when they asked him, why haven't you taken any step on getting out of this stuff? He said, I believe this is now part and parcel. I can't stop doing this. So that person now getting to listen to what you just said now, I believe he might have a change of mind. And that makes our conversation very powerful and educating. So, shall we get started with the questions, Benjamin?
Sure, I'm all ears.
Okay. So, when I was going through this, I was so curious. I wanted to know what it means. And let me just put it to you. What is the solar security net? Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. The Solar Security Net is a nonprofit organization here in the United States. We're a 501c3 entity, which means people within the United States can donate to us, including corporations, and receive tax deductions from their tax liability here in the United States. Essentially, what we're trying to do is
Oh,
create a nonprofit approach to renewable energy development through utility scale solar installations. So typically, all of the solar development that takes place here in the United States is for profit. So, companies that have investors and shareholders will uh, fundraise and develop these fields and then keep the revenue from the energy sold once generated for themselves. We're simply trying to fundraise capital through charitable means up front, build the same utility scale solar installations, and then deliver the energy that we're generating on the back end for free to disadvantaged communities. So the people who really need free energy the most.
amazing. That's a great job you're doing. I love that. I love that. Okay, okay, let's get personal a bit, you know. I want you to talk more about your background, okay? Can you give us some more insight as to your story and, you know?
There's so much to it. I mean, professionally speaking, I went from the Air Force. So I was stationed in Italy for 5 years, and then was stationed in California, then was stationed in New Jersey before I transitioned out. Once I retired from the Air Force, medically retired from the Air Force, I became a general contractor. So I was just doing odds and ends, home renovations, new builds, stuff like that. Around the pandemic time period, I took my carpentry skills and went more towards fine woodworking. So I was making furniture and mantelpieces and cabinets and curios and stuff like that. And then a little bit after the pandemic, I decided to retrain into a new career and became an electrician's apprentice. But it was during my time training as an electrician's apprentice that I started noticing inefficiencies in the United States solar development strategy. So that was when I decided to take that opportunity and develop the nonprofit that I'm working on now. And the rest is sort of history.
Beautiful. Okay, now I got it. Okay, so let us return back to solar, all right? How powerful and important is the solar energy, you know? We've been hearing so many kinds of information as to solar and all of these things. So I want you to talk to us about how important and powerful it is.
Sure. I mean, solar, relatively speaking, is a pretty new technology. I mean, it's existed for probably 15, 20 years from a rudimentary capacity. But when you put that side by side with other energy generating technologies that we have, not just here in the US, but throughout the world, other technologies have had hundreds of years of development time on solar. So we're now seeing a transition away from the sort of prototype and test period of solar, and we're really starting to move into an age where technology is advancing at a pretty exponential rate in terms of quality and efficiency. So solar, well, I don't think solar is ever going to be the one-stop fix for all of our energy solutions. It is going to be a vital part of us transitioning away from using fossil fuels as an energy source. Um, in my estimation, I want to see the expansion of solar development over the next 20 or 30 years, but then repurposing all of our renewable energy infrastructure to the development of hydrogen fuel, because I believe that nuclear and hydrogen are the technologies of the future, energy producing technologies of the future. So it's just going to take people creating longer term plans, because right now we're doing a lot of stuff very knee jerk reactiony. Like we need to stop planning in short term increments for profit, and we need to start looking at long term viability with some of the technologies we have available to us. But I think there's still ample time and room for development. And I think, as a nation and as a people throughout the world, I think if we can figure out energy, we're going to be able to break into the next evolution of, whatever the next problem on our plate is. Like, we have the technology and the resources to solve energy. I think it's time that we take a breath and do that. That way we can focus on the next thing that's going to be on our plate. Maybe like
Hmm.
starting to get along with one another and, treat each other like equals and respect one another's autonomy, like, important stuff like that.
That's right. I got it. I got it. Okay, so let us look at what motivated you, you know, to start this endeavor. Can you talk more about that?
There's quite a few reasons. I mean, I don't think it was any one thing, but a couple of them is I've always, as a recovered addict, I have learned that my strength and my sobriety comes from serving other people, like living in service of the greater good instead of just myself. And so this was a way for me to leverage the skills that I had already, learned throughout the course of my life and apply it into a way which can alleviate a lot of suffering on the American people through zero cost energy. The other reason is I I really want to find a wife and start a family, but the world's scary right now and there's not a whole lot that's being done to make the world a better place. So I figured, if I'm going to take the risk of bringing new spirits into this world, I want to make sure that I'm doing my part to make the world a better place for them.
Beautiful. That was a great answer. You mentioned some words that are really very important. Service. If it were to be someone who has got the wrong motivation, he would put profit first before service. And I think that's one of the major problem that we're facing in many, many, many industries. They go after profit first rather than service. And I was trying to use one support. Um, how do they call it now? Their support. I was trying to reach out to them, and you see, it took days for them to reply my message. And when they sent me a message, it was just hi there, good morning. And it took another several days again for them to now reply to the problem now. So I feel like folks like that, they really need to listen to folks like you who's got this insight that service first, not profit first, service first. I love that. And you also said you felt like you should play your own part. And that's amazing. Okay. So we have two more questions to go. I believe there are some existing companies already. So can you talk to me about how your strategy, is different from these companies?
Sure. I mean, our approach to development itself, infrastructurally, is not all that much different. Um, the main differences in our approach versus theirs, as you said, is, like, I guess, profit versus service. So a for-profit energy developer in the solar sphere is going to make sure that the costs are as minimal as possible on the upfront to build their infrastructure. That way they can make the most money on the back end by selling their energy and then splitting up the revenue that they earn. Whereas we are trying to look at not only giving back to communities with zero cost energy, but using this opportunity for energy development to solve some other problems that we're facing here in the United States infrastructurally. So not only are we going to be targeting like disadvantaged communities who need the energy, but then we can also find spots in the United States energy grid that are weak. So the grid has different areas of strengths and weaknesses depending on how old the infrastructure is, how far away it is from existing substations and power production. And if we're going to decentralize power production in the form of utility scale solar, we can actually use those solar installations and battery storage systems to reinforce some of the weaker areas of our grid. So we can attack a lot of social problems under the nonprofit umbrella in a way that's really never been done before, all while giving donors and corporations a means to reduce their tax liability while also supporting infrastructure development. So we're really trying to create a win-win-win-win situation where we can get everybody on board because profit isn't our motive. We're hoping to attract people who want to do the right thing, who want to see the right things done, and just unite them under our banner and then fix a lot of these problems that we see happening in the United States and in other areas of the world.
Beautiful. I love that. That's amazing. Okay, where do you see your company in 5 years' time?
Whew, in 5 years? I mean, I feel like once this gets going, I have no idea what direction and what velocity this is going to take. Right now, what we're focused on, we're actually going through a period of reorganization because for the last year and a half, it's really just been me like developing this and doing all this, but I've started to build out a pretty significant advisory board. So now we're taking this opportunity to kind of take a step back, figure out who off the advisory board is going to serve on the board of directors. And we're restructuring our web development or our web infrastructure under a .org, so we're more credible in the nonprofit industry. And we're focused on getting our first prototype field built. So we're developing a 5 megawatt field locally to where I'm at. So it's just a process of grant applications, fundraising, getting the word out, doing talks, honing our numbers and our business plan. But in 5 years, I'm hoping to have probably a couple of the prototype field operational so we can prove proof of concept or viability of our concept in the nonprofit arena. And then once we have that, we're just going to be scaling that idea up and then finding significant places to build these fields. So 5 years from now, man, I would love to have 100 megawatts developed in 5 years. But I mean, that might be me being optimistic, but I mean, who
Nah,
knows?
nah. Nah, yeah, I love
This
it. I love
works.
it.
This works as well as people support it, essentially. So the more resources we can get in, the more impact we can have.
That's right. That's right. And you see, I am convinced that you would even have more than that because you see, people tends to be attracted to something that is right, good, and problem solving. And that's basically what you're doing. So I am convinced that you would even have more than that. Okay, so to bring this to an end, Benjamin, for the sake of those folks who just listen to our conversation and they would love to support your mission and they would love to learn more about what you're doing. And like any final thought that you have, to round up with, and let's say these folks want to reach out to you also, how can that be possible?
Yeah. For right now, our original web development is still going to be live. So if you want more information, even though some of it's going to be changing, visit www.solarsecuritynet.com. If you want to support us with a donation, go to GoFundMe/SolarSecurityNet. And if you want to reach out to me directly through email, you can reach me at ceo@solarsecuritynet.com. And then we also have some socials that we're trying to get off the ground. So if you want to follow us, find us at Solar Security Net or Solar Security Net Incorporated on social media.
Beautiful. So, any final thought?
Thank you for having me. Like this opportunities like this give me a chance to, talk about it with other people and get my ideas out, sharpen my tongue, if you will, because in my experience that the tongue is the greatest weapon that we possess. So
Yeah,
thank you for giving me the opportunity to hone my message.
yeah, beautiful. So that's going to be the end of the show, Benjamin. Thank you for coming and thank you for educating us as to this insight on solar. Most of the things you said about solar, I haven't actually heard of it before. So you educated me, and I know same goes with the audience too. Thank you so very much, man. It means a whole lot. Thank you.
Thank you.